Alaikum warahmatullah. How's everybody doing today? Good, can you hear me? Alhamdulillah. So today we are on year 16. We're going to be talking, inshallah, about a pretty heavy topic called the Battle of Uhud. So inshallah, I'm going to start with you on page 219 for those of you who have the book. Additionally, if you have printed the document that I sent out today, I sent out a Prophet's Household worksheet, which that you can fill in. You can even just download it. This is what it looks like. Let me share my screen with you. So I have sent you all this worksheet, which is the same type of worksheet. It's the same kind of a chart that happens throughout the book every few years, where we update the household of the Prophet. So if you would like to download this or print it, or if you have it, that's great. And you can actually, I recommend printing multiple copies of this, because what you do on this worksheet is you say what his age was, the Prophet Muhammad's age, and then you can also notice the Quranic year. And then basically it has like a chart of the wives that he has at that time, his children, even his grandchildren. It also includes a section for adopted family and children that may have you know, come from that adopted family. So this is a Prophet's household chart. And to really know this well, I recommend that you print a few of them as you're going back through the Sirah. There's another thing that I sent all of you today, which is a late Medina chart, because very soon we're going to be getting into the last quadrant, which is the late Medina quadrant. So I do recommend that you go ahead and print that at least by tomorrow if you haven't done that. And that way you can start filling that in as well. We are still on the third quadrant, however, so I can show you, since my my document camera comes in, inshallah, tomorrow. I don't have it yet. So let me show you where we are. We are on early Medina. Here's one version of what that looks like. It is that third quarter that we're talking about today. So we are still talking about the third quarter that we're going to be like pretty much finishing up soon. So also on this chart, it looks like this. So we're on the third quarter. Okay. So let me, we have another call going on in the house. Let me tell him to kind of quiet down. Now that the world lives on Zoom, it's like multiple Zoom meetings going on at the same time. So anyways, let me mute everybody. All right. Okay, welcome everybody. It's so good to see all of you here today. May Allah accept your dedication. So I just showed you the QY timeline. Feel free to print what I have, or just, you know, make a note of it. In fact, I got a beautiful example of students' work coming in from a girl who I'm going to show you. I was going to show you later to make sure we have as many students, but I'm going to go ahead and show it to you right now because I'm so proud of her. So let me show you this young girl's work, which is absolutely amazing. So she, okay, actually let me, I think it's better when I share after I pull it up. So it's under student work, and this is Arisa Sharif. Arisa, you have done a fantastic job, mashallah. Let me share her work. And I hope that you can all see the screen, but if you look at Arisa's pie chart, she has all kinds of very good notes going around the pie chart, highlights, notes, and then she has this entire like 3/4 of this filled out. Let me know if you cannot see, but she has the early Makkah, the late Makkah, the early Medina, and she has every detail labeled here with notes, highlights, different colors. I mean, I'm just looking at it and I feel like, you know, it's hard to forget this beautiful chart. She also has like more explanatory notes. So this is a great example of note-taking that I'm really proud of you, Arisa, and she has been regular in the class, and she has really been doing a great job, which we can see from like all the Kahoots, and I know many of you are doing a really great job, so I'm so proud of you. Thank you for sharing that. And all of the students' work is also online on the webpage. So if you go to the webpage, let me show you really quick. So we are here, here's Student Work Gallery. And yes, we're going to be getting to it soon. So here we go. So you can see right here, let me know if you cannot see the screen, but right here we have a student work gallery. And some of you that have sent in your work, well, actually that should have Arisa's as well, because I did upload that. So let me refresh my screen. Here we go. There's Arisa's as well. So everybody is on here. We have Shanzana, Maliha Anjum, we have Mariam Anjum, Shaila Rahman, and we have Arisa. So thank you for submitting that. Another thing that's on the website is something really exciting, because we are really getting close to the end of this Sira 2 weeks quicker than we thought. So we're actually just a few years away from ending. And so I was thinking that since we do have 2 more weeks in this class that we had scheduled out, that I could offer like an extension, like a hybrid type of a thing. And so right here, if you look on this tab of the website, you're going to see this flyer. So we have like 2 more weeks of time. And if we're finished with all of the stuff for up until the end of the Quranic years, 23 years, we can actually go on and talk a little bit more about the history of the Hadith scholars, which is called Hadith Sciences, and kind of go a little bit into Riyadh al-Salihin and do like a survey course, which would only take like maybe 2 weeks, inshallah. So we will start that. If we finish our Sirah this week, then we can do the Hadith Sciences from Sunday, inshallah. So we're looking at, inshallah, July 19th until the 30th, we would do like Hadith Sciences, inshallah. So stick with me if you would like to, and that'll be a really great class as well. So let me start our topic, inshallah, for today. So it's a really, it's a lot of factual detail. So I'm just going to, just going to be going through all this. Once again, we're on page 219. So at the top of 16.1, we learn that not only does the Battle of Badr escalate tensions between Mecca and Medina, it begins to divide the Arabian Peninsula into competing sides. In the battle's aftermath, the Prophet forms alliances with several tribes along the Red Sea coast, aimed at blocking Mecca's coastal trade routes. So the Prophet is forming alliances. As we know, the Muslims have won Badr. And so in order to, block these coastal trade routes, he reaches out to, the Quraysh reach out to Bani Ghatafan and Hawazin. The Quraysh reach out to Bani Ghatafan and Hawazin. So in response, the Prophet sets out on several preemptive marches to the east. And on one occasion, they were chasing the Bani Muharib, which is a subclan of Banu Sulaim from the tribe of Hawazin. The Prophet and his companions stopped to rest. And after falling asleep, the Prophet is abruptly awoken by the chief of Muharib with a sword standing over him and saying, who's going to hold me back from killing you now? It's like a horror movie, like who's going to stop me from killing you, So there's a really nice little chart, figure 16A, that's on this page. And also, thank you to all of you that did fulfill that book order with Sister Yasmin. Thank you to Sister Yasmin for going around and following up with everybody. She did submit the payment today because it took quite a while for everybody to turn in all their money. So she submitted that payment, which means that the books should be coming in, inshallah. So then you will all have a copy. And so here we go to 16.2, which is the assassination of Ka'b ibn Ashraf, which is on page 220. So after the Hijrah, there is a Jewish leader of the Banu Nadir tribe, and his name is Ka'b ibn Ashraf. And so you know how nowadays we have like commercials on television, we have YouTube videos, we have newspapers, and that's how people spread propaganda. Like, let's say politically they're not happy with somebody, so they spread propaganda. And what they had back then is this man who would write poetry against the Muslims. That was his way of spreading propaganda against the Prophet. So he was actually a pretty strong, opponent, Ka'b ibn Ashraf, to the point where the Prophet actually orders the assassination of this man. And so that's what happens in 16.2. What happens is after Badr, Ka'b visits Mecca to encourage the Quraysh to seek revenge after their loss. And when Abu Sufyan asks Ka'b if he's more inclined to Islam or paganism, he says paganism. And so Surah An-Nisa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually addresses this. Allah says in Surah An-Nisa, in verse 51, haven't you noticed the case of those Jews of Medina who received a portion of the scripture? yet they put their faith in idols and superstition. They told the faithless idolaters of Mecca that they, the idolaters, were better guided on the way of truth than the believers. Okay, and so by rallying the Meccans against the Medinans, Ka'b is considered treason. His actions are considered treason, and so then that is why the Prophet approves assassinating him. And so what happens is when Ka'b returns from Mecca, the Prophet asks for volunteers to neutralize the threat from Bani Nadir, and Muhammad ibn Maslama and 4 others whom the Aus volunteered to lure Ka'b from his fortress and kill him, and the Prophet approves. Okay, and so when the 5 companions carry out their plan, Banu Nadir furiously voiced their dissatisfaction to the Prophet, who remains unapologetic, because this man did so much harm to the Prophet through propaganda and tried to hurt the Muslims. We next go to 16.3, which is the Prophet's marriage to Hafsa. So what happens is, this is 1 year after the Badr, Umar's son-in-law, Hunais ibn Hudafa, dies. Okay, this is Umar's son-in-law. But this leaves a 18-year-old daughter of his, Hafsa, as a widow. And she is turned down by both Abu Bakr and Uthman, because Uthman also lost his wife, Ruqayya, which was also the Prophet's daughter. So then Umar is disappointed because Abu Bakr and Uthman are saying no, about marrying his daughter. And so he tells the Prophet. So the Prophet's response is this: behold, I will show thee a better son-in-law than Uthman, and I will show him a better father-in-law than thee. So he's basically taking it upon himself to marry Hafsa. So the Prophet not only agrees to marry Hafsa, he also arranges the marriage of his own daughter, Kulthum, to Uthman. Okay, and so Hafsa really integrates very nicely into the Prophet's family and becomes Aisha's close friend. So if you look at this beautiful family chart on page 221, this family chart is the same format as the worksheet that I sent you. So I sent you a worksheet that has the same kind of format. So here, the Prophet is 55 on page 221. Page 55, he has, it mentions all of his wives, his children, his grandchildren. So now he has Sauda bint Zama, Aisha bint Abu Bakr, and Hafsa bint Umar. Okay, and his children that are alive are Zainab, who's 25, Ruqayya is no longer alive, Kulthum is 22, and Fatima is 20. Okay, and we know that Qasim and Abdullah died in infancy. Let's go to the next page. We next have a section 16.4 that talks about Zayd's expedition to Qarada. Okay, so what happened is there were certain times of the year that they would go on trading routes, and so the summer trading season was coming to an end. So the Meccans sent a heavy caravan northeast to Iraq, led by Abu Sufyan's chief rival in Mecca. His name was Safwan ibn Umayyah. The Prophet hears of the expedition and dispatches Zayd ibn Haritha at the head of 100 horsemen. The men successfully intercept the caravan near Qarada and straightaway return to Medina with abundant spoils. This ambush is a financial disaster for the Quraysh, and they're forced to decide. They've lost a lot, and so they are forced to decide either to make peace or declare war. Okay. So then we go to 16.5 under that, which is called the March to Uhud. Okay, so within a year of their marriage of Fatima and Ali, they have a son named Hassan, which brings a lot of joy to the Prophet. However, this is followed by an alarming dispatch from Abbas in Mecca. Abu Sufyan has assembled an army of 3,000 men and 200 horses and is heading north to Medina. And he also has his wife Hind. And remember, Hind was determined to eat the liver of Hamza. She was very determined. She actually told her slave, Jubair ibn Mut'im's Abyssinian slave Wahishi, or Wahshi. So she told Wahshi that she could be freed from slavery if he killed Hamza in battle. So here's Abu Sufyan coming with 3,000 men, 200 horses. He has his wife, who has all this vengeance, and they're coming, okay? And so the Quraysh army marches up the western Arabian coast and camps north of Medina. They rest at a spot just south of Mount Uhud, okay? And that is where they feed on Medina's unharvested crops. And this arrival prompts many residents in the area to evacuate into Medina with their livestock. That night, the prophet experiences a visionary dream. So we know that some of his revelations come as visions in dreams, and that's a Kahoot question as well. So he learns, so the prophet doesn't know about this, but he gets a dream, and he tells the prophets that he got this visionary dream that he will get some injuries and loss of followers, but that the Muslims will kill the leader of the Quraysh. That is what the dream showed. And so at that time, the prophet doesn't know if this is a defense battle or an offensive battle. Okay, he still has not decided that yet. But here he talks with his companions, and he considers fortifying his troops defensively behind the city's natural defenses, which is a plan which many of the companions agree with, such as Abdullah ibn Ubay and a number of the older companions. But a lot of the younger companions urge the prophet to take the offensive and instead go and attack the Makkans at Uhud. So there's two different, opinions here. So either he could be on the defensive or the offensive, okay? And so if you look on page 223, during the discussion, Khaythama Abu Sa'ad also has a dream, okay? And he has a dream in which his son, who's already been martyred, invites him to paradise. And Khaythama argues to attack the Makkans at Uhud so he can join his son Sa'ad in battle. So that's another Kahoot question. So some of the companions do get dreams of their martyrdom, of the fact that they're going to die and go to Jannah. And so if we notice the beautiful response and the support from some of the true companions, because Malik ibn Sinan, which is a Khizraji helper of the Prophet, supports the offensive by saying this: "O Messenger of God, we have before us one of the two good things. Either Allah will grant us mastery of them, and that is what we would have, or else Allah will grant us martyrdom. I care not which it may be, for verily there is good in both." So I thought it was really notable that we should see that the companions, when they supported the Prophet, this is their strong attachment and their iman, to Allah. How little they were attached to the dunya. They said, you know what, we are going to support you, and no matter which way it goes, it's going to be good enough for us. Either we're going to get victory here, or we're going to be martyrs. There's no loss. They didn't feel this sense of sadness or loss, or they didn't have this anxiety. They were just so strong in their iman and in their support of the Prophet. So I think that, relating this back to some things that we talked about in our spirituality class of attachment to the dunya versus, attachment to Allah and attachment to the akhirah, we can see an example here in the companions of their very strong attachment to the Prophet of Allah. So here, the Prophet decides to go ahead and attack the Quraysh at the base of Mount Uhud. So he makes that decision, and he returns to his house where Abu Bakr and Umar dress him for battle. So he gets dressed up in his battle garb. And during this time when that decision was being made, some of the companions feel bad that maybe they pressured the Prophet into fighting at Uhud when normally maybe he would have just been on the defensive. But then one of the more prominent companions, Sa'ad ibn Mu'adh, suggests that from now on they should let the Prophet determine military strategy, without their interference. So the Prophet emerges from his house in full battle armor, and he gives the battle flag, the banners of the banner of the battle. He gave it to 3 men, okay, and those men were at the bottom of page 223. He distributes 3 banners. Their names are Usayd ibn Hudayr of Aus, Hubab ibn al-Mundir of Khazraj, and Mus'ab ibn Umair of the Quraysh. He gives them the battle banner, and then he comes out with 1,000 men. The Prophet comes out with 1,000 men, and he asks Abdullah ibn Maktoum, who is a blind companion of Mecca, to lead the prayers in Medina during his absence. So as you can see, one thing, every time the Prophet leaves for anything, every time the Prophet has to leave the city, he leaves somebody in charge. And that's part of our sunnah, to always leave an amir behind to take charge of affairs while the leader is gone. If you look on the next page, another dream of a companion is Hanzala ibn Abi Amir, who married Jamila, okay? He married Jamila on the same evening that the Muslims were supposed to dispatch. And that night, and so the Prophet says, it's okay, you can stay back because it's your wedding. And that night, Jamila dreams that the door to heaven has opened to let Hanzala inside, okay? And so when, you know, and it closed behind him. So she has a dream. It's the very beginning, you know, they just got married, but the wife, Jamila, has a dream that her new husband, Hanzala, was let inside of Jannah, okay? And so, so then what he does is when he hears about that dream, he runs, and he, you know, after that morning, he runs to catch up with the rest of the army, which is already left for Uhud, because that is, for him, that is very, very good news. Yes. And so another companion and a recent widower, Abdullah ibn Amr, also has a dream that he is going to be martyred on the battlefield. And before leaving for Uhud, he instructs his only son, Jabir, to stay behind and take care of his 7 younger daughters. So, you know, we can see this pattern. Jabir is not the only person disappointed to have to stay behind. Several other young boys try to join the expedition, but the Prophet only permits 2 15-year-olds, Rafi ibn Handij and Sumara ibn Jundub, to join the army. So what we learn later is, you know, the non-Muslims would actually allow children and women to fight along their side, but on the Muslim side, the Prophet didn't want that. He didn't ask the women and children to come. He would leave them safe behind. However, there was a couple of women that came just to really nurse, you know, the wounded soldiers. So that is one difference between the Muslims and the non-Muslims. There's a nice little map also on page 224 at the bottom showing the area of the Uhud. We look at page 225. So there's some confusion that's taking place, and this confusion, basically there's the Muslim army, and then there's when 2 other clans, Bani Salima of Khazraj and Bani Harith of Aus, consider withdrawing as well. Jabir reminds them of their oaths to fight alongside the Prophet. So due to the confusion, there's a couple of clans that kind of are confused, and they want to give up, and they want to go, you know, they want to withdraw. But then Jabir ibn Abdullah reminds them, Surah Imran recalls the tense moment before the battle. So if you look at this passage from Surah Imran, verse 121 to 122, it says, remember that morning, Muhammad, when you left your family to assign the believers to their battle stations at the Mount of Uhud, God was listening and he knew all about it. Remember when 2 of your emigrants almost lost the will to fight, yet God was their guardian and the believers should trust in God. So now it went down from 1,000 to 700. That's how many the Prophet had. He had 700 men, and the Prophet and his men camped between his enemy and the mountain of Uhud. And Abdullah ibn Jubair chose to lead 50 archers at a rise to the left of the main army. This is kind of significant. So Abdullah ibn Jubair has chosen 50 archers, you know, to be at a certain point, and now the Prophet orders them, he instructs them to keep the Meccan cavalry at bay with their arrows no matter what happens. He said, don't leave, keep the Meccan cavalry at bay. And this is what the Prophet said. He said, whether we win the battle or lose it, stand steadily in your position and mind that we are not attacked from your side. To further emphasize this point, he adds, if you see us snatched into pieces by birds, do not leave this position of yours till I send for you. And if you see that we have defeated the enemy and trodden on them, do not desert your position till I send for you. So he's really emphasizing for them not to leave. And we go to page 226. The Prophet puts on another coat of mail, or, you know, his army uniform, and he presents a sword to his followers, asking which companion is most worthy of wielding it against the Quraysh. Although Umar ibn al-Khattab and Zubair ibn Awam rise to the challenge, the Prophet motions to Abu Dujana ibn Kharasha, okay? And so, and then I did mention that the 2 women who came just to nurse are, well, actually, he leads the men to the battlefield closely accompanied by Zayd ibn Haritha and Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas and Sa'id ibn Uthman. But the women who came to nurse are Nusayba bint Ka'ab and Sulaim bint Milhan. They focus on supporting the wounded soldiers. Those are the 2 women. We go on to 16.6, the Battle of Uhud, more on the Battle of Uhud. So the Meccans have 3 battalions. They have Abu Sufyan, who leads from the center, and they have Khalid ibn al-Walid and Ikramah ibn Abi Jahl. These are the 3 battalions, and they lead from either side. With the armies facing each other, Abu Sufyan steps out and announces that the Quraysh will have no quarrel with the Aus and the Khazraj, and he asks them to abandon the Prophet's army, but they refuse. And then much to Hanzala's dismay, his father Abu Amir emerges from behind the Meccan infantry and also invites the clans of Aus to leave the Prophet's side. And he is also denied. And then on the Meccan side, Talha ibn Abdullah of Abd Dar steps forward and challenges anyone in the Muslim army to a duel. Waving the Meccan banner, he's followed by his 2 brothers and 4 sons. Ali ibn Abi Talib rises to the challenge and kills Talha in the opening duel, and Hamza kills Talha's brother. Then Ali, Hamza, and a few other companions finish Talha's other brother and 4 sons. So this is like a duel that's mentioned. If you look at the top of page 227, the 2 armies meet. Abu Dujana begins causing, havoc on the battlefield with a sword given to him by the Prophet. He strikes down every man in his path and stops short of killing Hind when he realizes she's a woman. And then Wahshi, do you remember that slave? He gets a clear shot at Hamza. This is that slave that Hind wanted, assigns him to kill Hamza. So he gets a clear shot at Hamza and fatally pierces him with his javelin. And just as Jamila bint Abdullah saw in her dream Hanzala, Ibn Amir is martyred at the foot of Mount Uhud. This is the companion who saw the dream. And then there was some intense fighting. The Prophet's forces finally break the enemy line, and they were sensing victory, but then this is what happens. They were sensing victory, but then 40 archers abandon their posts, the same ones that the Prophet said not to abandon their spot. Those 40 archers abandon their post to go and collect the war booty or the spoils. They leave Abdullah ibn Jubair with only 9 other archers to protect the rear of the Muslim army. So I just want you to know that's a pretty significant point in the Uhud. That's a game changer when they leave their spot, right? Because they have now disobeyed the Prophet. And then Khalid and Ikramah spot the opening circle that they left. They left like this opening. And they see that opening and circle around the northwest of Uhud to attack the Prophet's forces from behind. Soon enough, all 10 archers are martyred. So they had left 10 and they're all martyred. And the rear flanks of the Muslim forces began to flee up the mountainside. So, here is where the downfall happens. And we learn in Surah Ali Imran, verse 153, that Allah says, when you are scrambling up the slopes of Mount Uhud in full retreat, not even noticing those around you, the messenger was behind you calling you to come back and face the enemy, but you ignore him. So God brought the disappointment of shame upon you, even as you disappointed the Prophet by running away from him. This added shame befell you so that you wouldn't feel bad only for the war prizes you missed, but also for what you suffered as well. And God is well informed of all that you do. So it is more important to listen to Allah and his messenger than chasing after the materialistic war prizes. If you want to see a little bit more detailed map at the bottom of page 227, you can see where they were faced in battle, and kind of the arrows point to like the ways that they ran around. Now, the next few pages, or the next couple of pages, really talk about further more about this and just give some Quranic passages. Due to time, I'm going to go on to 16.7, which is on page 230. So the aftermath of Uhud. So when the Quraysh, when they bury their dead, or when they bury the Muslims, they mutilate their bodies. Like, it's not enough that they killed them. They turn it into like this ceremony where they, destroy their bodies of the martyrs. And when Abu Amir locates his son's body, Hanzala, he asks that it is not mutilated. And of course, one of the people that's mutilating them is Hind, right? She's extremely, vengeful. Abu Sufyan calls out to the Prophet and challenges him to another 3rd battle next year at Badr. And the Prophet accepts his challenge. And basically what happens at this point is the Quraysh decide to turn back to Mecca because they heard that the Prophet had 300 fresh soldiers awaiting at Medina. So instead of going to Medina, they go back to Mecca. And when the Prophet finally descends to the battlefield, he's angered at the sight of the mutilated bodies. And the Prophet actually is so angry that he says he's going to mutilate 30 bodies at the next battle, but Allah corrects him. In Surah Nahl, verse 126, we learn that Allah says, if you can bring consequences against them, do not bring any consequences against them that are worse than what you have suffered. However, if you persevere patiently instead and suppress the urge to retaliate, then that's the best for those who are patient. Okay, so he's discouraged and told not to do this. You don't just go as low as they do. And the next paragraph on page 230 tell us about the losses at the Battle of Uhud. Okay, so the losses at Uhud include 22 out of 3,000 Makkans and 70 out of 700 from Medina, 65 helpers, 4 immigrants, and 1 Jew. The martyred include Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib, Abdullah ibn Jahash, Hanzala ibn Abi Amir, and Khaythama Abu Sa'd Musab ibn Umair, and Thabit ibn ad-Dahdah. Okay, these are the martyred from the Muslim side. And according to his father's wishes, Hanzala's body remains untouched on the battlefield, and the Prophet confirms that his body had in fact been washed by angels, because we learned that none passed him, or Hanzala, who did not give thanks, for in his beauty and his peace he was a sign from heaven to inform the bereaved of the present state of their martyrdom of their martyred kinsmen. The tragic loss of some communities' most valuable supporters comes as a shock to Muslims. The Prophet is particularly moved by the casualties and laments. Would that I had been left abandoned with my companions at the mountain's foot. And then we have a illustration 16E, which tells the details of the losses of the Battle of Uhud. Okay, so if you would like to see the details of the numbers, the notable Makkans that were killed, the notable Muslims that were killed, you can see that on that chart. And then we have page 232 to 234 have many Quranic passages which you can read for yourself. There's a lot of long passages. And then we have on 16.8, the chase to Roha. After returning home, the Prophet falls into a deep sleep and misses the call for congregational night prayer. In the morning, he announces that only those who fought at Uhud may chase after the Quraysh who have retreated to the nearby settlement of Roha. And Surah Nisa says, don't hesitate in pursuing the enemy. If you're suffering from hardship, know that they're suffering similar hardships too. Remember that you have hope in God while they have hope in nothing. God is full of knowledge and wisdom. Okay, and then we go on. 16.9 says that Surah Ali Imran reflects on Uhud. So on 236, like the whole page is excerpts and passages from Surah Ali Imran. Also 237 is passages from Surah Ali Imran. If we go to page 238, we have something called, so actually I'm going to go to page 239. So there is a marriage. So after the Battle of Uhud, the Prophet marries Zainab bint Khuzaymah, who is the widow of Ubayd ibn al-Harith. So Zainab is from the Hawazin clan of Amir. So after that marriage, the chief of that clan, Abu Bara ibn Malik, invites the Prophet to send teachers to his clan. So the Prophet sends 40 men to answer that call to teach them about Islam. But what happens is 38 of them are slaughtered at Mu'ana by the neighboring Hawazin clan of Banu Sulaym. So that is called the Mu'ana ambush. I think that's a good question. The Mu'ana ambush happens when the Prophet marries Zainab bint Khuzaymah, and basically he sends 40 people by the request of the Amir of the clan. When he sends 40 teachers, 38 of them are slaughtered. That is called the Mu'ana ambush. Okay, let's go to 16.12, the expulsion of Banu Nadir. So we have the expulsion of Banu Nadir, which is what happened is Banu Nadir had a pre-existing alliance with Banu Amir, and the Prophet requests their assistance in paying blood money for 2 killed men by Amr ibn Umayyah. They agree to the Prophet's request, invite him and his companions to dinner, but this is what happens. Secretly, they plotted to kill him. So it says that the Prophet receives an inspiration that his hosts are planning to kill him by dropping a stone on his head. So you know how sometimes the Prophet learns about if somebody is making a conspiracy against him, that's part of his privilege, of revelation. So he tells them, so soon after the incident, the Prophet sends Muhammad ibn Maslama back to Bani Nadir and tells them that he knows about the assassination plot, and this is treason, and so that clan is given 10 days to leave the city, okay? And that is the expulsion of Banu Nadir. Let's go to the next page. Yes, actually, I think we're going to go on. Okay, so yes, so we have the moral victory at Badr. So a year has passed. So now I'm on year 17, page 243. So a year has passed since Uhud, and there's a drought in Mecca. So the Quraysh people, due to this drought, they're not really prepared to fight another rematch at Badr, but the Prophet Muhammad, but here's what happens. Abu Sufyan sends somebody with a rumor. He sends Nu'aym ibn Masud of Banu Ghatafan to Medina to spread a rumor in Mecca that he has amassed a great army and is preparing to march to Badr. So because of that rumor, the Prophet goes ahead and prepares, the Prophet leaves Abdullah ibn Ubay's son Abdullah in charge of Medina, and he leads 1,500 men to the battlefield. But the Quraysh do not show up there, okay? And so that's considered a Muslim victory, and that spreads throughout Arabia. If we look at 17.3, after the Ghatafan expedition, okay, after the Ghatafan expedition, the Prophet leads 1,000 men to Dumat al-Jandal, which is near the Syrian border, in a surprise move to break up a group of marauders from the northern tribe of Kalb and demonstrate the growing momentum of the Prophet's mission. And Surah Anfal explains the source of Muslims' unity. So that is verse 63 really quick. It says, he united the hearts of the believers in brotherhood, even though they came from so many diverse backgrounds. Even if you spent everything on earth, you could never have produced the kind of heartfelt unity by your own efforts, but God brought them together, for he's powerful and wise. Very quickly, 17.4, little Hussein, Hussein is born in the Prophet's household, so another grandson. It's born to Fatima and Ali. But then the death of one of his wives, Zainab bint Khuzaymah, he only married her for 8 months and she died. And so after she died, there was the death of Abu Sulaymah, which is one of the Prophet's dearest cousins. And just before his death, Abu Salama. So just before his death, Abu Salama prayed that his wife would remarry to a man better than him. So 4 months later, the Prophet asks Abu Salama's 29-year-old widow to join his household. So Aisha had no difficulty accepting Hafsa and Zainab into the family, but Salama was very beautiful and becomes a source of mild jealousy for the Prophet's youngest wife. And so this is something, I have a Kahoot question, because sometimes, the Prophet had several wives, and they were human beings, and sometimes they would have a little bit of jealousy with each other. So that is if I ask you that on the Kahoot, make sure you know that. Sometimes the Prophet's wives had that. And then page 246, there was relative peace in Medina. The Prophet focuses on guiding the companions how to live a balanced life and a meaningful life. He teaches that their day should be divided into 3: work, worship, and family. And so the Prophet's daily routine included playing with his grandsons Hassan and Hussein, and his granddaughter Umama, which is through Zainab, and his grandson Osama, which is through Zayd. And the Prophet remains committed to serving the community and spending his time with his companions. And he would visit Abu Bakr every single day. So he had a lot of, he was very committed to his family. Also, in the year after Uhud, Surah Ahzab permits him to marry more than 4 wives. The limit number is given to other Muslims and specifically instructed Zainab bint Jahash. He was instructed to take Zainab bint Jahash's hand in marriage. And despite the fact that there was a social stigma because she used to be married to his adopted son, so she's the ex-wife of his adopted son, the Prophet agrees to the marriage. And so the Prophet heeds the injunction and marries Zainab 4 months after she divorces Zayd. Okay, so there we have another marriage of the Prophet. And then we have a few passages on page 248. We have some passages for Ahzab, and also on 249, but because we're out of time, I'm not gonna read those to you. I think you can, inshallah, read those for yourself. So I'm gonna go ahead and end here because we're out of time. We have a Kahoot game to play, and we'll continue with year 18 tomorrow, which is about the trench. So I did mention most of the Kahoot questions to you. Today we did year 16, which is the full Uhud, and 17. So I think that we have covered the Kahoot questions. So if everybody can hop over, inshallah, to the Kahoot, I'm going to share that screen with you. Bismillah. Play. You guys have been great. I know it's getting to be a lot of information, but some of the things that the organizers that I sent you, those worksheets, that's going to help you out. So we have the Kahoot game pin is 735-4453, 735-4453. And while you're getting on there, I'm going to go through and see if there's any Kahoot questions that I should remind you about. Okay, so we know that one of the prophet's wives was named Zainab, right? So she's the other Zainab. That's going to be one of your questions, actually. Zainab bint Khuzaymah. Zainab bint Khuzaymah is one of the prophet's wives. And also, we know that one of the wrongs that occurs is that when the prophet ordered his soldiers to stay at a certain spot during Uhud, that they disobeyed and they left that spot. Okay, we know that. We have 14 players. Let's see what else we have in here. So I told you that some of the companions saw that they would be martyred, and also that the prophet saw a vision about fighting in Uhud. Zayd's expedition to Qarada was, this is a financial disaster for the Quraysh. So I think, yes, I think we're pretty good. Ka'b ibn Ashraf was the Jewish leader of Banu Nadir. He was the Jewish leader that was assassinated because of his treason. Okay, I think we're good. Let's start. We have 16 players, mashallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So we have 10 questions today. The first question, number 1. Who is the Jewish leader of Banu Nadir who had spread propaganda about the Prophet Muhammad and got assassinated? Was it Ka'b bin Malik, Ka'b bin Ashraf, Hudayfa ibn Tufail, or Zayd ibn Haritha? Yes, the answer is Ka'b ibn Ashraf. I know that's kind of tricky because I put 2 Ka'bs, and I'm so sorry about that, but I should have warned you that that one, make sure you get the last name right. So it's Ka'b ibn Ashraf is the one we just mentioned. Very, very good. Oh, we have Muhammad al-Khatib, Doc, Jimmy, Fatima, and Manha. So we have 3 young boys that are in the lead, and we have Fatima and Manha. All right, number 2. Which of the Prophet Muhammad's wives is Omar's widowed daughter of 18? Hafsa, Sauda, Aisha, or Khadija? Which of the Prophet Muhammad's wives is Omar's widowed daughter of 18? The answer is Hafsa. Many of you remembered that, mashallah. Very, very good. Next question. Oh, we even have Naveed coming up here. Very, very good, mashallah. Number 3. Which event was a financial disaster for the Quraysh? Ambush in Qarada led by Safwan, ambush in Abyssinia led by Abraha, ambush in Medina led by Abu Bakr, or ambush in Qarada led by Zayd? Be careful on that one. We just talked about that one, and it is the ambush in Qarada, but it was led by Zayd. This was led by Zayd. Very, very good. So many of you thought it was the ambush led in Qarada, which you got that part right, but it was not led by Safwan. Okay, next. Very, very good. Number 4, true or false? The Prophet Muhammad received visionary dreams of the fighting in Uhud. Is that true or false? Did he receive visionary dreams of fighting of Uhud? Excellent. That is true. Excellent. Yes, he did. Good job, mashallah. The next question, number 5. Some companions received dreams of being martyred in Uhud. Some companions received dreams of being martyred in Uhud. Is that true or false? Yes, that is absolutely true. Very, very good. Oh, doing better, mashallah. Next, what happens immediately after the Prophet Muhammad marries Zainab bint Khuzaymah? Mauna ambush, Battle of Trench, Hajj, or none of these? What happens immediately after the Prophet marries Zainab? So, okay, so this is the story that we talked about where the leader of the clan that she comes from asked for 40 teachers and 38 of them were ambushed, right? So that is the Mauna ambush. Very good. Most of you got that right. Good job. The girls are moving up. What did the Prophet Muhammad order the soldiers to do at Uhud that they failed? To not eat till they got back to Medina, to not leave their stations, to pray all their nafil, or none of these? Yes, they failed to not leave their stations. That is where that is where they failed. Very, very good. Next question. You guys are getting all these very good. All the soldiers obeyed the Prophet Muhammad and stayed at their station in Uhud. Is that true or false? All the soldiers obeyed the Prophet Muhammad and stayed at their stations in Uhud. Yes, that is false. Most of you got that correct. So you know the main events going on in Uhud. Number 9, which of the following became one of the Prophet Muhammad's wives during this time period? Khadija radiallahu anha, Asiya, Zainab bint Khuzaymah, or Maryam? Which of the following became one of the Prophet's wives during this period? Yes, the answer is Zainab bint Khuzaymah. Perfect, mashallah. Good job. And the last question, true or false? Sometimes the Prophet wives were a bit jealous of each other. Is that true or false? Sometimes the Prophet's wives were a bit jealous of each other, and that is absolutely true. That was pretty quick. MashaAllah, I'm so proud of you. Let's see who won today. 9 out of 10. Muhammad Al-Khatib, MashaAllah, Mabruk, 9 out of 10. Fatima Mushtaha, and 9 out of 10 also goes to Maliha, mashallah, mashallah. We also have Jimmy and Naveed. You guys did a great job, mashallah. And I know that Naveed is a very young one. So he is joining us. He's one of our younger students, mashallah. So I'm very proud of Naveed as well. So let's do a quick dua. I know we always go a couple minutes over. We only have 5 more years of the seerah to cover, inshallah. So I'll meet you back tomorrow. Make sure you have that worksheet printed out if you can about the last quarter. And we're going to end with a quick dua. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wal asr innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. Jazakumullahu khairan. Have a great afternoon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.